It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We're not, as some would have us believe, doomed to an inevitable decline. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. You can see heroes every day going in and out of factory gates. Others, a handful in number, produce enough food to feed all of us and then the world beyond. You meet heroes across a counter, and they're on both sides of that counter. There are entrepreneurs with faith in themselves and faith in an idea who create new jobs, new wealth, and opportunity. They're individuals and families who take taxes support the government and whose voluntary gifts support church, charity, culture, art, and education. Their patriotism is quiet but deep. Their values sustain our national life. But I remember the story of a fellow who was running for office as a Republican, and he was in a rural area and it wasn't known to be Republican, and he stopped by a farm to do some campaigning. And when the farmer heard he was a Republican, his jaw dropped and he said, "Wait right here till I go get Ma. She's never seen a Republican before." So he got her, and the candidate looked around for a podium from which to give his speech, and the only thing he could find was a pile of that stuff that Bess Truman took 35 years trying to get Harry to call fertilizer. So he got up on the mound, and when they came back, he gave his speech. And at the end of it, the farmer said, "That's the first time I ever heard a Republican speech." And the candidate said, "That's the first time I've ever given a Republican speech from a Democratic platform."
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. Now, for 3 decades, we've sought to solve the problems of unemployment through government planning, and the more the plans fail, the more the planners plan. We have so many people who can't see a fat man standing beside a thin one without coming to the conclusion the fat man got that way by taking advantage of the thin one. That no one in this country should be denied medical care because of a lack of funds. But I think we're against forcing all citizens, regardless of need, into a compulsory government program. No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. So government programs once launched never disappear. Actually, a government bureau is the nearest thing to eternal life we'll ever see on this earth. They've told us they have a utopian solution of peace without victory. They call their policy accommodation. And they say if we'll only avoid any direct confrontation with the enemy, he'll forget his evil ways and learn to love us. But every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
The United States of America is unique in world history because it has a genius for leaders, many leaders on many levels. But back in 1976, Mr. Carter said, "Trust me." And a lot of people did. And now many of those people are out of work. Many have seen their savings eaten away by inflation. And today, a great many who trusted Mr. Carter wonder if we can survive the Carter policies of national defense. Trust Me government asks that we concentrate our hopes and dreams on one man, that we trust him to do what's best for us. Well, my view of government places trust not in one person or one party, but in those values that transcend persons and parties. And I would like to lead that crusade with your help, and it would be one to take government off the backs of the great people of this country and turn you loose again to do those things that I know you can do so well because you did them and made this country great.
Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience. Let us begin an era of national renewal. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. I did not take the oath I've just taken with the intention of presiding over the dissolution of the world's strongest economy. In the days ahead, I will propose removing the roadblocks that have slowed our economy and reduced productivity. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. About a fellow who went to the KGB to report that he lost his parrot. The KGB asked him why he was bothering them. Why didn't he just report it to the local police? Well, he answered, I just want you to know that I don't agree with a thing my parrot has to say. We'll note the law's description of pirates, hostis humanis, the enemies of all mankind. There can be no place on earth left where it is safe for these monsters to rest or train or practice their cruel and deadly skills. We must act together, or unilaterally if necessary, to ensure that terrorists have no sanctuary anywhere.
Letter came from Peter Sweeney. He's in the 2nd grade in the Riverside School in Rockville Center. And he said, I hope you get well quick, or you might have to make a speech in your pajamas. All we need to begin with is a dream that we can do better than before. All we need to have is faith, and that dream will come true. All we need to do is act, and the time for action is now. Thank you.
The story was an American and a Russian arguing about their two countries, and the American said, look, in my country I can walk into the Oval Office, I can pound the president's desk and say, Mr. President, I don't like the way you're running our country. And the Russian said, I can do that. The American said, you can? He says, yes. I can go into the Kremlin to the General Secretary's office, pound his desk and say, Mr. General Secretary, I don't like the way President Reagan's running his country. What I'm describing now is a plan and a hope for the long term. The march of freedom and democracy, which will leave Marxism, Leninism on the ash heap of history as it has left other tyrannies which stifle the freedom and muzzle the self-expression of the people.
Well, I believe there's a better way of eliminating the threat of nuclear war. It is a strategic defense initiative aimed ultimately at finding a non-nuclear defense against ballistic missiles. It's the most hopeful possibility of the nuclear age, but it's not very well understood. Some say it will bring war to the heavens, but its purpose is to deter war in the heavens and on Earth. Now, some say the research would be expensive, perhaps, but it could save millions of lives, indeed humanity itself. And some say if we build such a system, the Soviets will build a defense system of their own. Well, they already have strategic defenses that surpass ours, a civil defense system where we have almost none, and a research program covering roughly the same areas of technology that we're now exploring. And finally, some say the research will take a long time. Well, the answer to that is, let's get started.
Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. And I want to say something to the school children of America who were watching the live coverage of the shuttle's takeoff. I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them. The crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger honored us for the manner in which they lived their lives. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God.
While we Americans detest war, we love freedom and stand ready to sacrifice for it. We love freedom not only because it's practical and beneficial, but because it is morally right and just. In advancing freedom, we Americans carry a special burden, a belief in the dignity of man in the sight of the God who gave birth to this country.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I've spoken of the shining city all my political life, but in my mind it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hummed with commerce and creativity. That's how I saw it and see it still. And how stands the city on this winter night? More prosperous, more secure, and happier than it was 8 years ago. But more than that, after 200 years, 2 centuries, she still stands strong and true on the granite ridge, and her glow is held steady no matter what storm. And she's still a beacon for all who must have freedom, for all the pilgrims from all the lost places who are hurtling through the darkness toward home. We've done our part, and as I walk off into the city streets, a final word to the men and women who for 8 years did the work that brought America back. My friends, we did it. We weren't just marking time, we made a difference. We made the city stronger, we made the city freer, and we left her in good hands. All in all, not bad. Not bad at all. And so, goodbye, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
God bless you, Nancy!
They say there's a place where dreams have all gone. They never said where, but I think I know. It's miles through the night, just over the dawn, on the road that will take me home.
It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We have every right to dream heroic dreams. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans. God bless you and thank you. Thank you very much.
You can keep your seat, I'm gonna stand. An Eskimo needs a Frigidaire, like I need your rocking chair. I don't need your rocking chair. You don't need your rocking chair. The Geritol or your Medicare. Geritol or your Medicare. I've still got neon in my veins. This gray hair don't mean a thing. This gray hair don't mean a thing. I do mind rocking on the stage. You can't put this possum in a cage. Yeah, my body's old, but it ain't impaired. Well, you know we ain't impaired. Well, I don't need your rocking chair. You don't need no rocking chair. My body's old, but it ain't impaired. Yeah, oh no, you ain't impaired. I don't need your rocking chair.
Granddaddy came home in a B-52 and a pine box covered in red, white, and blue. He was one of the brave and the proud and the few. 21 guns helped us say goodbye. I stood there in silence, trying hard not to cry, as the preacher he quoted lines written in red, and then he folded his Bible and in a broken voice he said, there's only two people who's ever died for me, laid down their lives just so I could be free. They both went through hell, bare crosses and shells, and both got back up again after they fell. They never picked the fight, but they're there to pick up the pieces. God only knows who we would be without soldiers and Jesus. It seems like the news loves to run them both down. Whenever we need them, they're always around. So don't hand me a party's political views, 'cause there's a left side, a right side, and then there's the truth. There's only two people who's ever died for me, laid down their lives just so I could be free. They both went through hell, bare crosses and shells, and both got back up again after they fell. They never picked the fight, but they're there to pick up the pieces. God only knows who we would be without soldiers and Jesus. To me, they're both heroes for the path that they chose. 'Cause one fights for my life, one fights for my soul. There's only two people who's ever died for me. Laid down their lives so I could be free. They both went through hell, bent crosses and shells, and both got back up again after they fell. They never picked the fight, but they're there to pick up the pieces. God only knows where we'll be without soldiers and Jesus. Soldiers and Jesus.
To get to anywhere, maybe we'll make a deal. Maybe together we can go somewhere, any place is better. Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove. You got a fast car, I got a plan to get us out of here. I've been working at the convenience store. Managed to save just a little bit of money. Won't have to drive too far, just cross the border and into the city. You and I can both get jobs, finally see what it means to be living. You got a fast car, so fast enough so we can fly away. We're gonna make a decision, live tonight or die this way. That's the way it is. Said his body's too old for working, his body's too young to look like it. Mama went off and left him. She wanted more from life than he could give. He said somebody's got to take care of him, so I quit school, that's what I did. You got a fast car, we go cruising, entertain ourselves. You still ain't got a job, not working the market as a checkout girl. And all things will get better. You'll find work now, get promoted, we'll move out of the shelter, buy a bigger house and live in the suburbs. You got a fast car, so you're fast enough so you can fly away. You gotta make a decision, leave tonight or let me die this way.
American girls and American guys, we'll always stand up and salute. We'll always recognize when we see old glory flying. There's a lot of men dead, so we can sleep in peace at night when we lay down our heads. My daddy served in the army, where he lost his right eye, but he flew a flag out in our yard till the day that he died. He wanted my mother, my brother, my sister and me to grow up and live happy in the land of the free. Now this nation that I love is falling under attack. A mighty sucker punch came flying in from somewhere in the back. Soon as we could see clearly through our big black eye, man, we lit up your world like the 4th of July. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list, and the Statue of Liberty started shaking her fist, and the eagle will fly, and it's gonna be here when you hear Mother Freedom start ringing her bell, and it'll feel like the whole wide world is raining down on you. Oh, brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue. Served and the battle will rage. This big dog will fight when you rattle his cage. You'll be sorry that you mess with the U.S. of A. 'Cause we'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list, and the Statue of Liberty started shaking her fist, and the eagle will fly, and it's gonna be hell when you hear Mother Freedom start ringing her bell, and it'll feel like the whole wide world is raining down on you. I'm brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
Can I have everyone's attention? We're going to go ahead and get started with the rest of tonight's program. Please feel free to take your time and finish eating. Please don't rush through. Take your time and enjoy it. My name is Jeremiah Clark, and I'm the chairman of the Sullivan County Young Republicans, as well as the Northeast Tennessee director for the Tennessee Young Republicans Federation. I have the privilege tonight of introducing our guest speakers and our featured speakers. We're going to begin tonight with chairman of the Tennessee Republican Party, Mr. Scott Golden. Scott Golden has been involved in Tennessee politics since the late 1990s, working as a field director in West Tennessee for the Republican Party. He has since served our state in several positions of authority, culminating in his election as the state party chairman in 2016. Chairman Golden, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Oh, come on. Let's go. I know we got to shake dinner off. It's good to be a Republican. Donald Trump's in the White House and Hillary's not. That's all that matters. There we go. Thank you for having me up here again. I just love coming back to Upper East Tennessee. How many hands do we have that are happy that early voting is almost over? In 2 weeks from now, the elections will all but be over. I see you back there, I know. Thank you all for running. Be thankful that they're all Republicans from up here, because most of the state, May 1st, just kicks off the campaign. So they've got 90 more days of working hard. So thank you all for offering yourself for office, the 70 candidates. It means an absolute lot. Of course, I've got two of them here that are particularly important to me, Mr. Matthew Johnson and Ms. Linda Buckles, who allow me this wonderful opportunity to run across the state and be the chairman of the Tennessee Republican Party. Folks, 2018 is going to be absolutely exciting, and we're going to be brief because we're going to hear from all the candidates this evening. And a couple of us have laughed because 24 hours ago we were at the other end of the state looking at the Mississippi River. I just want you to know that's how hard all of these candidates are working and how important Sullivan County is to that piece of the puzzle. That everybody, despite being 537 miles down the road, everybody made the effort to get back here, because that's how important of what we have to do this year. Make no mistake about it, if we do not get excited and we do not come out and vote, the Democrats will win. You guys know that better than anywhere else in the country, because you got to see what happened in Virginia. Do not let this November of 2018 turn out like November 2017 in Virginia. We cannot afford to let it happen. I tell people this all the time, that we had an election in Middle Tennessee a couple months ago for a state Senate candidate. And that state Senate candidate was losing to somebody that was proud to proclaim themselves a radical atheist. We were losing because the Democrats were that excited. Folks, what we believe in is on the table this November. So the question for us is, are we going to go out and are we going to work for it? So for the local candidates, finish your race, work hard, come together. I'm reminded of a story, and I'll be brief and I'll just say this and sit down, but I'm reminded of a story of my middle child, and I know everybody's got one of those tough ones that you have to raise. And she came out of her room one day, she turned 10, and she looked at me and she said, "I've got to clean this room up. It looks like a bunch of babies in here." And I said, "Kippy, what's wrong?" She said, "You've got these pink elephants everywhere in my room." And now she kind of said, "Why in the world did you buy me so many elephants?" And I started sitting there and thinking, I said, well, we're Republicans and you're going to have elephants to the day you die. That's the way it works, right? But I started thinking, I said, how did we become elephants? And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the story of how the Republican Party, the mascot became an elephant. But it was a Thomas Nash drawing in 1875 that first depicted the Republicans as an elephant. And the reason Mr. Nash chose to depict us as elephants is because then, like today, we were the dominant political party. But if you go back and look at that photo, there is a jackass with a lion's skin over the top of its head that was scaring the big giant elephant. And the elephant was running towards chaos. Folks, that's where we find ourselves today, like the day that we were given the elephant as a mascot. The question for us in 2018 is, are we going to run to that chaos? Are we going to be scared by the donkey in wolf's clothing? That is the question for us to answer in 2018. Folks, we have an exciting year. We have candidates. We have the next U.S. Senator from the great state of Tennessee here. We can clap. We will have the governor of the 50th governor of the great state of Tennessee being here. Unfortunately, your legislators are not going to be able to, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to make it tonight because they are finishing up. And I know one former legislator that's probably happy, Governor Ramsey, you're happy to be in Kingsport tonight rather than Nashville. Thank you for all that you have done in securing our party financially, your leadership, all that you have done over the years. Folks, we would not be where we are in the state without the help of Governor Ron Ramsey. That is a fact. Absolutely. We have a lot of good that's happening, and we have a lot of exciting times, and I'm looking forward to listening to these candidates. They have worked extremely hard, and folks, we have 150 days until this primary, or until we're voting. Then we have close to 250 days to when we take our message to November. So let's make sure that we are the big elephant, not running towards chaos, but running towards victory and keeping America and Tennessee great again. Thank you very much. All right. Did I end early on you? You don't ever really have to tell a politician to sit down too soon, do you? Thank you.
I'm going to get a workout tonight. Thank you, Chairman Golden, and thank you for your energy and enthusiasm. We very much appreciate it. Our next speaker tonight will be Congressman Phil Rowe. Phil Rowe's service to our community has included 3 decades of service in the medical field, as well as service in the United States Army Medical Corps. He was elected to Tennessee's 1st Congressional District in 2009, and during his tenure has served as the chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, amongst other positions of authority and service. Congressman Rowe, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeremiah. Thank you all for coming. It's great to see a huge Republican crowd, and as you all probably know, I've had a lot of changes in my life in the last few years, and one of the more pleasant changes, the most pleasant change I've had, is that I married last May the 6th. I still remember got the date right. And when I told Clorinda, and she's here with me tonight, I told her when we got married, I said, "Is your passport up to date?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't we go on our honeymoon to a foreign country?" And she said, "Where are we going?" I said, "California." So that's, after visiting San Francisco, there is no question they don't live in America. I know that for sure. And Ron, I know that Scott said a lot of great things about you, and I know the people in this room know this about you, but you are indeed a great family man. You helped turn the Republican Party around in the state of Tennessee, and everyone from Mountain City to Memphis who's a Republican and a conservative ought to thank Ron Ramsey sitting right there for the work you did. You know, we've got a lot of people to hear today, a lot of great candidates, and we're blessed with so many great candidates running for governor. My very dear friend, Marsha Blackburn, is going to be the next U.S. Senator from the state of Tennessee as a Republican, and we are going to have to work hard, but she is going to win that election. You know, a year and a half ago, nobody thought, including moi standing here, that Donald Trump would be elected president of the United States. I think nobody did. None of the polls did. Nobody did. But a lot of people did. And the reason was, I think he gave some hope for people who had not had hope previously. And this man won. And the thing I've learned about him, and Marsha knows him well too, is he is absolutely... he is resolute in keeping the promises that he made. So what did he run on? He ran on health care reform. He ran on tax reform, regulatory reform, reforming the VA, border security, securing our country, and upgrading our military, which had become degraded under the previous administration. So what has happened? What did the House of Representatives do? We passed, with Marsha's help and leadership in the Energy and Commerce Committee, we passed a health care reform bill that failed by 1 vote in the U.S. Senate, unfortunately. We still stuck with Obamacare, where half the people in my district, in the 1st Congressional District, paid a penalty last year. As many people paid a penalty in the 1st Congressional District, a tax, a fee, whatever Judge Roberts wants to call it, than actually got any help from that. And out-of-pockets and co-pays are so high that people can't pay them. We are going to have to fix this problem. It is a huge problem for people. Number two, tax reform. And the reason tax reform hadn't been done in 30 years is because it's really hard to do, to get that many people, 218 in the House and a majority in the Senate with a very narrow majority. But we passed tax reform. And remember, the Congressional Budget Office said there's going to be a $1.3 trillion deficit. All these deficits are going to occur and so forth. They made an assumption that the U.S. economy would never grow more than 1.9% ever again for the next 10 years. Wouldn't happen, because that's what had happened under Obama, and it never happened before that through a 10-year decade. In 120 days after passing this bill, the CBO came out with another score that we're going to grow at this year at 3.3%. We haven't done that in a decade, and that adds $500 billion to the GDP. The deficit in 2.5 years under President Trump will be gone or less. And you have people next year, when they file tax returns next year, 95% of the people in the 1st Congressional District will file a short form. Businesses got the biggest tax cut they've had, from 35% to 21%. And the thing that amazed me is we had trillions of dollars stuck overseas. Eastman Chemical is a large multinational company. They have businesses all over the world. They pay taxes wherever that business is in the world, and then if they brought the money back, they had to pay another 35%. Now they can pay a one-time 12% repatriation and bring the money back tax-free from then on. Guess what Apple Computer did? Within 90 days of passing that bill, they brought $300 billion back to this country, paid $38 billion in taxes, and are creating 20,000 new jobs in Wisconsin. And we're seeing that great growth in Tennessee. And I could go on and on about that. Regulatory reform. We had used an obscure thing called the Congressional Review Act one time in American history. The House of Representatives and then the Senate and then the President did it 14 times to reduce the regulatory burden in this country. If complying with regulations were a country, it would be the 10th largest economy in the world. It costs our economy $1.8 trillion or more a year just to comply, check the boxes, to comply with government regulations. So that 14 bills that passed reduced an enormous amount of regulations that occurred. The VA reform, I'm chairman of that committee, and we know about the Phoenix scandal 4 years ago where veterans could not get in. Immediately, we passed a Whistleblower Protection and Accountability Act. For the first time in American history, you can fire an employee at the VA. And why do we need to do that? Most employees do a great job. We had one woman in Puerto Rico that was involved in a bank robbery. It took a year to get rid of her. I mean, it sounds funny, but it absolutely happens. We got that passed. Number two, we passed a claims appeals reform. We have 470,000 veterans out there who are waiting on a claim to get adjudicated, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 7 years. And I had a very close friend of mine die while he was waiting for that claim to get adjudicated. We now have passed a bill that will make that much faster. Thirdly, a GI Bill. When I got out of the military in 1974, 75, I got the GI Bill. And while I'm mentioning that, I want our veterans, we have not had them do that, but I want, if you've served in the military, if you're a Marine, you don't have to stand, but if you've been in the Army, it's okay. If all of our veterans would stand, or active duty military, let's have them stand and let's thank them. Thank you for your service. We passed a bill, so I could use my GI Bill for 3 years, or 4 academic years, but it sunsetted at 10 years. We no longer could use it. So I used it for 2 years, and I'm grateful to this day that my nation invested that money in me at $300 a month that I got to this day. 2001, after 9/11, in 2008, we passed a post-9/11 GI Bill. It's a fabulous bill, but it's sunsetted at 15 years. So if you're 25 and 41, your job goes overseas, you can no longer use your GI Bill. It was a bill that I sponsored, and we named it after the American Legion guy, Harry Colmary, who actually wrote it out on a piece of paper after World War II, where almost half of our returning veterans used that bill to better this country and help make it what it is today. Now you can use your GI Bill benefit the rest of your life. So if you're 50 and your job goes away, you can use that benefit. Number two, If you haven't served the requisite time, but you get wounded in combat, you're a Purple Heart winner, you get to use the GI Bill the rest of your life. If you take a round for this nation, we owe you that. Thirdly, if you're a Gold Star, if you've lost a spouse in combat, we up that benefit. And if you're a Guardsman or reservist, and I tell her we have an all-volunteer Army now, I actually realized that I volunteered for the Army. I went to the mailbox one day and I volunteered after I got my draft notice. So that's, I don't know how you all did, but only the Army could dream up something as crazy as an obligate volunteer. That's what I was. But anyway, those Guardsmen and reservists, I didn't serve with them then because most of them, they drafted all the folks that we needed in the military. Today, those men and women, the 278's been called up, I can't tell you how many times. Those men and women were not getting the benefit. Now they get the benefit. We have, and thank you for your service too for doing that. We are now passing in the next 4 weeks, we've got 4 major pieces of legislation I intend to put on President Trump's desk. And one is a community care bill where veterans can go outside the VA or inside the VA to get their care. Number 2, a bill that is extremely important to our World War II Vietnam veterans who are dying at 500 per day. It's a bill, a caregiver bill, and right now for a catastrophically injured post 9/11 injured veteran, if their spouse stays home and give up their work, they give up their job, we pay them a stipend to take care of that wounded veteran at home. But if you're pre-9/11, if you're Vietnam, World War II, and you're a disabled veteran, you can't get that. I'm going to have that on the President's desk where those men and women who've earned that benefit can have it also. And lastly, a bill for our Blue Water Navy folks that may have been exposed to Agent Orange. That problem has not been solved for 30 years. We're going to get that on the President's desk. And lastly, our military. This is heartbreaking to me. In the last year, we've lost 4 times as many of our servicemen and women in training accidents as we did combat. In the last month, we've lost 17 of our men and women in training accidents. The omnibus bill, whether you're for it or against it, upgraded the military by almost $70 billion over the baseline. We're asking these people to do a terribly important, dangerous job, and I can tell you this. I am never going to apologize for 3 things in the U.S. Congress. One is if you are a military, active duty military, and you are in harm's way, I want you to have whatever you need to protect yourself and your buddies from harm's way. I want you to have that. Number 2, when you come home and you've served this country admirably, I want you to get those services from the VA. And thirdly, I'm going to support our farmers who provide our agriculture and our food, because I like to eat too. But thirdly, for those folks, those 3 things. Even with this upfunding, listen to this, folks, it's not a safe world out there. Look at North Korea, and look at what happened at ISIS, on in Syria. We will still be funding our military at 20% less than when Barack Obama was sworn into office in 2008. General Mattis said he needed this, and he is going to get this now. I'm going to finish up by telling you what a privilege it is to serve everyone, to serve the 1st Congressional District. It is a great place to live, raise a family, and to represent. We represent the values I wish the rest of the country had. Someone else who has and shares those values with us is my good friend Marsha Blackburn. And I'm going to tell you this fall, we're going to run hard in the 1st Congressional District. And the reason we are is the left their head is screwed off. They're so crazy now. I had a lady stop me at a little restaurant in Greene County, and she shook her finger in my face. She said, "You should retire." And I said, "Ma'am, I would, but I'm afraid the guy replacing me would be worse than I am." So anyway, that's how fired up they are. We have got to get you all to get every friend you have out and help us get our voters out. If we do, we will be fine. We will get people elected. And I think we're going to be fine this fall because we've got the right policies. The left have no agenda or plan for the country. We do, and we are getting that plan done. Don't listen to the TV and tell you nothing is being done. All of those things I just mentioned are being done or are already done. This president has gotten an enormous amount of things done. So I want to finish by just by telling you, to me, about one of the greatnesses of America. And I'm going to share just a quick story about a guy named Homer Peace to show you the shoulders that we stand on in this country. Homer went down in 1943, and he was from Johnson City. He was going to sign up for the Marine Corps, and they refused to take him. They just said, "No, son, you can't come in." He was 13 years old, 13. But that wasn't good enough for Homer. What he did was he cleaned up some derelict down in Johnson City, put a suit on him, and walked down to the U.S. Army and said, "This is my dad, I'm 17, and they signed for him." So he got in the Army, the 101st Airborne Division, at age 13. He parachuted in on Normandy at 15 years old with the 101st Airborne Division. He was wounded, and his mother didn't know where he was. He just run off from home. She didn't have any idea, and of course they didn't have cell phones and internet and all that, so they were trying to chase his paperwork down. And he was wounded and was sent back to England, and recuperated and got back with his unit and fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and was wounded again, won the Bronze Star, and the paperwork all caught up with him, and he got busted from sergeant. He was a 15-year-old sergeant to a private, and they finally sent him back to Johnson City at 15, and he ran away from home again. And he ran over to Fort Bragg and tried to join the Army again, and his captain, his commander said, "Son, Homer, go home and be a kid. You've already fought in the Battle of the Bulge and the Normandy." So he did. He went to Science Hill, 1945, as a freshman, having completed World War II. He got in the ROTC unit at ETSU, and of course that wasn't good enough for Homer. He went into Ranger School, became a Ranger, and unfortunately this has a sad ending to it. 1965, he won the Silver Star when he was killed in Vietnam. Those are the shoulders of the people we stand on. Is that worth fighting for? Is that worth dying for? Is this country worth that? Absolutely. Amen. Every time. And that is why we cannot let the loony left take this country over. We have to fight for those values that we hold clear, that we know are the right values. And thank you all for being here tonight and supporting all these candidates. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. At this time, we had hoped to hear from our local elected legislatures, but unfortunately, as been pointed out, they are still in Nashville at this time. So in lieu of them being here in person, we do have a quick video to show you that they put together and that they sent to us to share with us. So if you'll please turn your attention to the monitors, we'll watch that video now.
Hello, Sullivan County, and congratulations on a fabulous dinner. There are a few of us who would love to be there but can't be tonight. We're still here in Nashville as the legislative session is winding down. You know, I greatly appreciated the time I got to spend as one of your state representatives, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity I have now to serve in the office of the Comptroller of the Treasury. I appreciate everything that goes on in Sullivan County, and I'm always just a phone call away if you need me as I continue to serve here in Nashville. Your legislative delegation wanted to be sure they could be with you tonight, even though they're, like me, trapped in Nashville. So we're delighted to be able to bring them to you via this video, starting with Sullivan County's fabulous State Senator, John Lundberg.
Good evening. Glad you're there. And frankly, I wish I were there. Instead, I am stuck in Nashville doing, hopefully, what you expect me to do and others to do. I did ask for one thing today. I wanted to go before everyone else, specifically Bud Halsey. But I have absolutely no doubt we'll share some stories with you. I want you to know I have not edited them. I probably should have censored them. But that's up to Bud. In all sincerity, though, I want to tell you, I think we are so fortunate. We are fortunate in the state to have a conservative majority that does an incredible job. Look at the things that we've accomplished, you have accomplished, and help us accomplish. You look at the team that we have in Northeast Tennessee. It's exceptional. We do not necessarily get along on every vote. It doesn't mean we vote 100% the same, but we agree with those basic principles, the principles you expect us to have. And I think we've managed that and done that and represented our area very, very well. I'd like to say welcome tonight to some of the folks who are there. Marcia, glad you're there and good to have you, Congressman Rowe. Good to see you there and glad you're running again too. So thank you for being where you are. Thank you for supporting us and thank you for doing what you do.
Next up, please welcome the representative from District 1, John Crawford.
Hello, fellow Republicans. So sorry I couldn't be with you tonight. It's always been a pleasure to attend the Reagan Day dinners and eat that wonderful chicken that we normally get. But we're down here in Nashville. We're working hard for you. Right now, we're in a very busy time working on the budget and getting things passed to keep Tennessee sovereign and keep us moving forward. So again, I hate I couldn't be there. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, there that I would have enjoyed talking to, but unfortunately, I'm here doing the people's business, and I'm excited for where Tennessee is going, and hopefully we'll be with you next time.
Next, a man that certainly needs no introduction, the representative from District 2, Bud Hulsey.
Well, I'm sorry that I'm not there. As you know, we're running over, and so none of us are probably going to be there, but I appreciate the opportunity to at least greet you via this venue. You've heard all the things a lot of times that legislators say when we're down here, and it's kind of like that for me. It reminds me of Zsa Zsa Gabor's 9th husband on their honeymoon. He said that he knew what he was supposed to do, but how do you make it interesting? And I guess that's probably the way we feel sometimes. I said this to a group not long ago. John Lumberg told me that I need to think before I speak, and I said, well, I don't really like doing that because I like to be just as surprised by what I say as everybody else is. But I got to tell you, it just came off the House floor, and we just passed a very, very significant bill dealing with adoption. It's the first in the country to really clear out the way and change some of the archaic way we did adoptions, to marry up children who need homes with parents who want children. And we say we're pro-life, we believe that, we talk that, but a lot of times we drop the ball, at least the way we've dealt with adoption. But the whole point of all that, it just kind of made me just again realize what a great state Tennessee is. And I'm so proud and honored to be here when we take things like this and on the cutting edge, it makes us number one. And it's just a privilege to be involved in all of that. And so I'm proud to be a Republican. I'm proud to be a Tennessean. I'm proud to be from Sullivan County. So thank you for allowing me this time.
Finally, please welcome the representative from District 3, Timothy Hill.
Well, hello, Sullivan County. As others have said, unfortunately not going to be able to be there for the dinner tonight, which is the first time in quite a few years that I have not been able to be there because we're still in session and still working hard, finishing up the people's business in the State House. I want to say thank you to the organizers of the event and of the dinner, and also to the party as a whole, because you're here tonight making the party strong as we're going into a very, very important election cycle here in the great state of Tennessee and nationally as well. It's easy to forget how important that our party is in the day-to-day and listening sometimes to the mainstream media, which I don't recommend doing. But it's easy to forget how important each of us are and what role that we play. But tonight, it's great that we can be together, standing strong for our Republican principles. So I wish everybody a good dinner and look forward to seeing you soon.
At this time, I get to introduce a very special individual who unfortunately was not listed in your programs at your tables just due to the timing of notification and the printing. But that is our Senate candidate, Marsha Blackburn. Blackburn has served as the representative for Tennessee's 7th Congressional District since 2002 and previously served as a member of the Tennessee Senate. Her time in the U.S. House has included service as both the Assistant Whip and the Deputy Whip, as well as service on various committees and subcommittees. Blackburn's plans for the U.S. Senate include continuing the fight to repeal Obamacare, protecting the unborn, protecting our Second Amendment rights, and if I understand this correctly, you are a concealed carry permit holder, is that correct? She is concealed carry. reduce wasteful spending, and supporting both President Trump's immigration ban as well as the plans for a better wall to protect our southern border. She is also taking a stand for Tennessee's veterans and is demanding better for those heroes who sacrificed so much for us all. Congressman Blackburn, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I am absolutely thrilled to be back here and to be with you. I had the opportunity to come this direction last weekend and serve as the Grand Marshal at Bristol. And that, I have to tell you, was a ton of fun. And it is always good to be in Ron Ramsey country. When I was in the state Senate, Ron was my seatmate and had the opportunity to get to know him and Cindy and their family and visit with you all here in Sullivan County and get to know a little bit more about Upper East Tennessee. And I join with Chairman Golden and with Congressman Rowe in saying we do owe a round of thanks and a debt of gratitude to Ron Ramsey for all he has done for the party in this state. So thank you, Ron. We appreciate all your efforts. We also appreciate the work that the committee has done in organizing this dinner. I served as the county party chairman in Williamson County, and I know the effort that goes into doing an event like this. So to your county party and the executive committee and the Republican women who have pulled this together tonight, thank you for creating such a wonderful event where we can come and celebrate what we are all about as Republicans and join together, and as Phil Rowe says, get ready for the fight that's coming our way this fall. And I thank each of you for sending Phil Rowe to Congress. He is doing a wonderful job, and as chairman of the Veterans Committee, he is leading the way in reforming the VA system in this country. He has done so much work. I tell you, there are a few people that will stay on the president's case about an issue until they get it done. And Phil Rowe is so in behind the president, working with him every step of the way, prodding him, being certain that he does everything that needs to be done for reforming the VA. And we had our Republican dinner in Washington a month or so ago, and the president actually called Phil's name, gave him credit, and really recognized him before that group at that dinner to thank him for the work that he is doing. So Phil, thank you for what you are doing to take care of the veterans in this country. And it's because you all send him there to do such a great job. Well, I will tell you, one of the things that people ask me most often right now is, Marsha, why in the world do you want to run for the U.S. Senate and serve in the Senate? The place is totally dysfunctional. And I always say, yes, you're exactly right. The U.S. Senate is totally dysfunctional, and that is exactly reason to go there, because the U.S. Senate is in desperate need of positive conservative change. And I figured out pretty early on in my career that I was pretty good at executing change. And when I went to the state Senate, I stepped up and I led that 4-year fight against imposition of a state income tax. And thank goodness for our great state legislative delegation and Ron Ramsey's leadership. They pushed forward an amendment to our state constitution. We will never have a state income tax in the state of Tennessee. And when I went to Congress, I fulfilled a promise that I made when I was running, and that was to restore your ability to deduct the sales tax you pay every year from your federal income tax filing. That was worth about $1.5 billion to taxpayers in the state of Tennessee. when we needed to investigate what was happening between Planned Parenthood and the third-party body part sellers, my colleagues in Congress asked me to lead that investigation. I did. It lasted a full year. I issued 15 criminal referrals, and today, because of that work, both the Department of Justice and the FBI are investigating Planned Parenthood and the third-party body part sellers. They are under a federal investigation. And that is the kind of change we need to the Senate so that the Senate gets President Trump's agenda finished. Now, I will tell you this. Phil Bredesen is not going to go to D.C. and back Donald Trump. He is going to go vote with Chuck Schumer. How can he vote with Donald Trump when he opposes him on nearly every issue? Repealing Obamacare is something that he is not going to do. Voting for tax cuts is something he's not going to do. Voting for tax cuts 2.0, which are coming your way in 2019, is not something that Phil Bredesen would do. So if you want a U.S. Senator who is going to stand with President Trump and vote for tax cuts, I ask that you stand with me. If you want someone who is going to stand with President Trump to build a wall, to end chain migration, to end sanctuary cities, to end the visa lottery, I ask that you stand with me. If you want someone who is going to support conservative Supreme Court judges who will not legislate from the bench, I ask that you stand with me, because that is what I'm going to do in the U.S. Senate. We have to have a U.S. Senator who is going to make the majority in the Senate act like a majority and put the president's agenda on his desk. And I will tell you, I was absolutely thrilled today when I picked up my iPhone and there was a Donald Trump tweet saying that he fully supported me in this run for Senate and that he looks forward to coming to Tennessee and getting on the campaign trail with us and making certain that we win this election. Now, Phil and I were talking this week about what's coming at us this fall. And of course, we're concerned about what the Democrats call their blue wave. And they are energized, and they are raising a lot of money. And we have a heavy lift. But Phil was talking about how wonderful you all are and how you always come through and how important that is going to be, because the Democrats, with their energy and their money, they do think they're going to push this blue wave straight across Tennessee. But as I say, when they get to Tennessee, they need to run into the red wall. We can't let them turn this state even a little bit purple. We have to make certain that we stand strong, side by side, united, all together, working as one team. My mom is 93 years old. She has been a state Republican women's chairman, not once but twice, in Mississippi. She's been the county party chairman. She has worked on races all of her life. She likes to use an acronym for TEAM. Together, everyone achieves more. And that is what we as Republicans need to do. We need to unite. We need to be ready for the fight. We need to be standing together. We need to stand with one another so that we keep this supermajority in the state House, in the state Senate. We need to be certain that the next governor of this state is a Republican governor of this state. And we need to make certain that we win this U.S. Senate seat. So I ask you all, stand with me, fight with me. Let's win together in November. Thank you so much.
Thank you. At this time, we now have the honor of hearing from the Republican gubernatorial candidates. Beginning on page 3 of the program at your tables, you'll find biographies of these candidates, which were prepared by the candidates' campaign teams. Now, I have read those bios, and I've also had the opportunity over the past 6 months to meet all of these candidates at various events around our community. And I believe that I can say that all of these candidates have qualities and strengths that are admirable and will be useful to them as the future governor. And so with that being said, on behalf of everyone in the room, I would like to wish the best of luck to all of the candidates running. We were going to go down the order alphabetically. Unfortunately, Diane Black was held up at the airport, but she is on her way. She will be here shortly. So at this time, we're now going to hear from gubernatorial candidate Randy Boyd. A business owner and philanthropist, Boyd served... You can come on up if you want. Boyd served as Governor Haslam's advisor on education, from which service the Tennessee Promise Program and the Drive to 55 initiative were established. Candidate Boyd, thank you for joining us.
Sorry for jumping up so quickly. We usually don't get an introduction. It's just, here's Boyd. And I always wondered what it would be like to follow Marsha Blackburn, and now I'm going to know. It's the last person that I would ever want to follow. That was a great speech, Marsha, and good luck to you. It's great to be back in Sullivan County. I've been to Sullivan County 20 times just in this campaign. I was adding them up as I came. It's always great to be back and meet so many friends and so many supporters. I was thinking about it as we're sitting at the table, though. Actually, Sullivan County has a special place for me. As I think about this journey and running for governor, it actually kind of started in Sullivan County. Because you see, about 11 years ago, I was thinking about creating some college access program, a nonprofit in Knoxville. And we heard about this program called Educate and Grow in Kingsport. So we came up and met with a gentleman named Keith Wilson and some other people here, and they shared what you were doing. We thought, what a great idea. So we borrowed some of those ideas and created something called Knox Achieves, which sent 1,000 kids to school in Knox County, which metaphorized into something called Tennessee Achieves that sent 10,000 kids, that then brought me to working for Governor Haslam, creating something called the Tennessee Promise. But it all kind of started here in Kingsport. So lots of great things happen in Kingsport. It's always great to be back here with you. So Congressman Rowe and I were just talking about, wouldn't it be great, rather than telling your stump speech all the time, if you could just tell stories from the road? I've been on the campaign trail now for 14 months. We've given a stump speech about 3 times every day, and it usually starts with a long introduction. Billy and I could give each other's story, and one of these days we need to do that. You'll give mine and I'll give yours, and I'll be very generous. I guaranteed we could do it very well. So I thought tonight instead, hopefully you'll indulge, I'm just going to tell you 3 stories from the road, and hopefully each one of them will have a point. If you don't want to read, if you don't know my bio, it's in the book. If you don't want to bother to read it, just very quickly, 7th generation businessman, not a politician, Christian, a conservative, family man. Oh, and I'll add one thing that's not in the book. Jenny and I had an aspiration for this year of a new title. It's the best title that we thought we could ever possibly have. And it's not Governor and First Lady. On this past Saturday at 11:45, Wiley May was born, our first granddaughter, so we're now Granddaddy and Grandmommy, so we're very excited. So here's the 3 stories. There's stories about Aaron, a story about Clarence, which will be the funny one, and a story about Valerie. So Aaron works in the police department or the sheriff's office in Campbell County. You might not know this, but Campbell County is the 3rd worst county in the entire country for opioids. I mean, our state is 2nd in the country for opioids. Campbell County is 3rd most addicted county, more deaths than any other county, less 2 others in the entire country. So when I'm traveling with Aaron in Campbell County, we talk about opioids a lot. I've been there half a dozen times over the last 14 months. But I was with him last fall, and we're driving down the main street in La Follette. a street we've driven down multiple times. He's got a big pickup truck, and he's driving. He's looking straight ahead. And he says, Randy, you know, the street doesn't look the same as it has for the last 5 years. See, every day I would drive down this road, and I'd see this man walking down the street that used to be my father. He's not really my father anymore. He's a different person. He doesn't really know who I am, and I don't really recognize him anymore. But it was always just comforting knowing that he was still there. The last month he died from an opioid addiction overdose. 5 years before, he had been prescribed some opioids for his back pain, and he got addicted. This wasn't some kid out for a joyride. He got addicted because he was prescribed some drugs that he probably shouldn't have been taking. I hear stories like that everywhere I go. Every place in the state, we hear stories like that. As governor, I've got a plan to attack opioids. I published it on my website 6 months ago in September. It's a 10-point plan, very briefly, 3 key parts, the first of which is we've got to mobilize. We've got to declare a state of emergency and put somebody in charge, a chief epidemic officer, and put all of our state's resources on this until we can end it. The second thing is we've got to just stop preventing people from getting addicted in the first place. As you might know, we're the second in the country in opioid prescriptions. Minnesota has the same population as we do. We prescribe 10 times more pills per person than they do. We just overprescribe. We've got to limit the prescriptions. Our legislature has done a great job this year of moving that ball forward. We've also got to educate and do a better job of teaching people how dangerous these things are. I was just with the United Way today here in Kingsport. They're doing a great job of creating some new programs, maybe like Educate and Grow, but things that will be modeled for the rest of the state, but some really great programs on trying to educate people on the dangers of these drugs. And finally, we've got to do a better job of recovery. Over the last 14 months, I've toured 50 different jails from all across the state. By the way, this is a little tip if you get nothing else out of tonight. If you want to commit a crime, I can suggest to you the best counties to do it, because you're going to end up in jail, so you want to make sure you pick a place that has a good jail. I can recommend Carter County. They have a great jail. Whatever you do, don't commit a crime in Morristown. Hamblin County Jail is absolutely the worst, and the sheriff will agree with me. The problem in the state of Tennessee today is when we treat people with opioid addiction, the place where we treat them is in our jails. When you talk to our sheriffs, they say 70% of the people in their jails are there because of an addiction or mental illness or some combination of both. As a state, we've got to start taking responsibility for giving people the proper places to get treatment. It's not in our jails, but recreate the mental health institutions that we used to have. About 50 years ago, we started closing them down. Today, we have 95% less beds than we did 50 years ago. Those people didn't go away. They're on our streets, they're in our jails. The good news is, not only is it the more humane and the more effective thing to do to give them treatment, but it's 7 times cheaper. So doing the right thing is also the most cost-effective thing. So we've got to do that. So that's a fairly somber topic. Let's talk about something a little bit more fun. So in Johnson County, at the start of my run, by the way, I ran from, you mentioned 537 miles. It's technically 537.3 from the Bristol state line to Memphis. So we ran that, and as I ran, I got to meet a lot of really interesting people. My last 2 stories are from Johnson County, which is, by the way, annoyed that I started my run in Sullivan County. But there's a big mountain between Mountain City and Sullivan County, and they don't have the great sign that Bristol does. So I'm in Johnson County at Mountain City, and I go to the senior citizens home. And they'll stop what they're doing and come and listen to the politicians speak. You can tell sometimes, maybe kind of like tonight, when people really aren't paying attention and they're really wishing you'd just stop talking. And so I could tell that in this meeting. After about 5 minutes, I thought, I should just stop and ask for questions. And you can also tell when somebody's going to ask you a question. So there's this gentleman named Clarence, I find out later, sitting at the edge of his seat, just, you knew that he was going to have a question the minute you asked. So I said, any questions? Clarence's hand shoots up immediately. And he says, okay, Mr. Governor, what I want to know is what are you going to do about potato chips? You see, every day I go to the store and buy my potato chips, and the bags get smaller and smaller. They keep putting fewer and fewer chips in the bag, and they get more and more expensive. Every day, the fat cats running the potato chip companies get richer and richer, and I'm getting less chips. What are you going to do about that? I don't know if you have some questions like that, Bill or Kay, but we get some crazy questions. And my team is in the back of the room, and they're looking at me like, wow, this is going to be a good one. But for a living, I sell an invisible fence. So you're kind of used to empathizing with your customers and handling difficult questions. So I thought, and this is an easy one to empathize with, right? So I said, well, you know, because it's true. Clarence, you're absolutely right. They are making those bags smaller, and they are putting fewer chips in there. And then I had an inspiration, because part of this run across the state was to talk about being healthier. And so I don't have an inspiration very often, but at that moment I did. I said, Clarence, I have a great idea. Rather than buying potato chips, we can go to the local farmer's market. We can buy fresh vegetables from our neighbor. We can make sure that we're getting great value. We're supporting the local economy, and we're going to be eating healthier. I thought, wow, that was pretty good. Clarence was not impressed. He just wanted more potato chips in his potato chip bag. The point of the story is, Congressman Rowe and I were talking about health care. We need to get a block grant so Tennesseans can make better decisions for Tennesseans, and that's the first step. But we also are missing a big part of the conversation, and that's just about being healthier. Tennessee is 6th in the country in obesity, 8th in the country in smoking. Actually, smoking kills 10 times more people per year in Tennessee than opioids does. 8th in the country in smoking. Our teenagers are the most obese in the country. So we're number 1 in that. Not something we want to be number 1 in. We've got to take better responsibility for our health. And lastly, we've got to be better consumers of health care. One of the things we fail to do too often is just ask the price. Imagine a marketplace where no consumer ever asks the price and no seller even knows the price. Try it sometime. Next time you go to the doctor and ask, hey, by the way, what are you charging me for this surgery or procedure? They won't know, and they'll be surprised that you even asked the question. We need to put more consumerism into our health care. And the final story is about Valerie. I actually met Valerie right before I met Clarence. I needed the comic relief after visiting with Valerie. I've been to Johnson County many times. I created something called the Tennessee Promise that allows every kid to go to technical college and community college for free. But it's a hollow promise in Johnson County. Because in Johnson County, there's no technical school. And long before I thought about running for governor, I was determined to try to help them create a technical school there. And so I'm going through the courthouse, and I'm sharing that this is something that I'm definitely going to do. And there's 4 young ladies behind the counter in the Register of Deeds office. One lady's name was Valerie, and as I shared that, her eyes teared up, and I'm thinking, I asked her, this is supposed to be good news. Why are you sad? And she says, well, you're 2 years too late. You see, when I graduated from high school, my dream was to be a nurse. There was a TCAT in Elizabethton. I'd have to get up at 5 a.m. every morning. I got up at 5 a.m. every morning, drove an hour to Elizabethton, took my nursing classes, drove the hour back, but we don't have a lot of money, so I had to work. I had to work a 40-hour week. And after about 4 months, I was just too tired, and I couldn't continue, and I ended up dropping out and losing my dream. As governor, I want to make sure that we put a TCAT in every county so that every kid has the opportunity to fulfill their dream. Thank you. Johnson County will be first. I can guarantee you that. Not every kid needs to go to a 4-year school. Not every kid needs to have a college degree, but everybody needs to have something beyond high school. That's where the jobs are. Welding, mechatronics. As Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, I traveled all over the state. Companies are desperate for those type of workers. If we can build these schools on the high school campuses, kids can actually graduate from high school not just with a diploma, but with a certificate that can get them a great job. And we need to do that all across the state. So those are my 3 stories. I want to just conclude with the vision. I'm going to borrow something from Representative Blackburn, who says, the GOP, I've heard you say this a couple of times, and I love it, the GOP can be for the great opportunity, or for the grand old party, but it also could be for the great opportunity party. And I really believe that that's what the Republican Party is about. We're not about entitlement like the Democrats. We're about opportunity. We're not going to give you a handout, but we're going to give you the opportunity to be successful. And I want Tennessee to be the state of opportunity. Opportunity for better education. Thank you. Opportunity for better jobs, and opportunity for everyone. And we can do that. If we can provide that type of technical school training or high schools, we can make sure that everybody has the opportunity to get a great education. If we can, and for opportunity for better jobs, if we create the workforce, the jobs will continue to come. And lastly, opportunity for everyone. We got to make sure that counties like Hancock County and Johnson County, some of the poorest counties in our country, have the same opportunity to be successful. So I look forward to one day that actually being our name. We're known as the volunteer state. Most people, when we're traveling around the country, I know many of you here have been all over the country, sometimes all over the world, and you tell them you're from Tennessee, what do they typically say? I tell you what they say for me. I'll say, yeah, I'm Randy Boyd, I'm from Tennessee. And they say, oh, Tennessee, that's the home of, anybody want to guess? Well, so we had a little mix, but I can tell you from firsthand experience, sadly, it depends on your point of view, but especially if you're in Moore County, you think this is a great thing. They say, oh, home of Jack Daniels. Well, you know, I don't have anything against it, but I just wish they could think of us for something else. And here's my dream. I dream that one day that you can tell people you're from Tennessee, and the first thing they'll say is, oh yeah, Tennessee, I've heard about that. That's that state of opportunity. That's the state where everybody has the opportunity to get a great education. And because of that, that's where everybody has the opportunity to get a really great job. And the best part about Tennessee is, unlike so many other cities around or states around the country, their small towns aren't dying and decaying. They're having this thing called a rural renaissance, where people are actually moving back to the small towns because they have broadband, they have a great education and great jobs. And so people are moving back, and everybody in Tennessee is having the opportunity to be successful. That's my dream. That's the state of opportunity that I hope to help us achieve together, but I can't do that without the opportunity to serve. So I would appreciate your vote, and thank you for letting me be with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Going alphabetically, our next speaker tonight would be the Tennessee Speaker of the House, Beth Harwell. Unfortunately, like the other local legislatures, she is still stuck in Nashville at the moment, but she did send us a quick 3-minute video to share with us tonight. So if you'll please once again turn your attention to the screens.
Good evening. I'm sorry I can't be with you this evening. Again, I'm Beth Harwell, Speaker of the Tennessee House of Representatives. It's been my honor to serve in this leadership capacity during, I think, our state's boldest and most successful initiatives, reforms that have led our state to greatness. When I became Speaker, I asked my members to put every piece of legislation that they voted on through a litmus test. Very quickly, that litmus test consisted of 3 questions. First, does it increase the size of government or not? We believe in limited government in the state of Tennessee. We've kept our government small, which has allowed us to balance our budget every year, live within our means. Did you realize that you live in the 3rd lowest tax state in the nation, and that we are, a gift to your children and grandchildren, the lowest debt state in the nation? That doesn't happen by accident. We put a lot of thought and effort into our budget. When I became Speaker, I said, I'm going to limit the number of bills that are introduced, because bills turn into laws and laws turn into big government. And that's not what we're like in Tennessee. Other states may be that way. The federal government is certainly that way, but not here in Tennessee. So first, does it increase the size of government or not? The second question is this: does it make it easy to own and operate a business in the great state of Tennessee? We want to be known as the most business-friendly state in the nation, and we're well on our way. When I became Speaker, we reformed our unemployment and worker compensation laws, making this a much more stable legal environment for businesses to flourish. My husband Sam is a small business owner, and I know how important it is for him to keep government out of his business. We try to do just that. And then third and finally, does it increase and make us move forward in education reform in our great state? We know the number one thing that government does is prepare the workforce for the next generation. We have some of the fastest improving schools in the nation right here in Tennessee because we have put high standards in place and held them accountable. But there's more work to be done. And certainly we need to put more emphasis on having children ready for career-ready day one when they leave our high schools. I am committed to our vocational and technical training across our great state. Those 3 questions have guided every decision I've made as Speaker of the House. And those 3 questions will go with me to the governor's office so that I make sure that Tennessee continues to have the best policy in place to let you, our great Tennesseans, flourish. I'm glad I could be with you this evening. It is a wonderful time to be a Tennessean, and it is a great time to be a Tennessee Republican. Enjoy your dinner.
Our next speaker is gubernatorial candidate Bill Lee, a business owner, cattle rancher, and 7th-generation Tennessean. Lee has served across our state on numerous boards and committees. In addition, his faith has led him into the missions field, where he has conducted service all across the globe in places as far away as Africa, Central America, and the Middle East. Candidate Lee, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who put this wonderful dinner together, committee and party. We go to a lot of Reagan Day dinners, but this one is unique and special, and you've done a remarkable job tonight. And I'm honored to be here with the likes of Governor Ramsey, who is an icon in this state, and I'm honored to be here and that you're here. Congressman Rowe, another strong conservative. These are conservatives, true conservatives who understand conservative values and principles. I'm grateful to be here with you all. And with my congressman, Marsha Blackburn, who, frankly, because of her being my congressman for the years that she has been an inspiration to me to do this, and I'm really excited that she's going to be my next senator. My wife, Maria, is with me here tonight. I want to be sure and acknowledge Maria. She is God's gift to me. And this journey for the last year for us has taken us here 20 times, but it's taken us all across the state 20 times, which means that she has traveled extensively with me and been a real blessing. So thank you, Maria. Actually, Maria's family, this feels, you know, when you come to a place as much as we've come here in the last year, it starts to feel a little bit like home. You know your way around. You know a lot of people in the room. Her family's actually from here. Most of you know that Scots-Irish legacy and tradition from this part of the country is actually Maria's past. Her grandmother and is Scots-Irish and was in this community, and her family goes right back to this area. My family's been in Tennessee for 220 years, so we're grateful to be here. Thanks so much for having us. I'll tell you a little bit about me. For those who don't know me, I am a business guy. I run a company called Lee Company. We are primarily an HVAC, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, and plumbing and electrical business. I employ about 1,200 skilled tradespeople. It's a great privilege to be able to run that business. I'm also a cattle farmer. My family, I live on a 5th generation farm that my family has operated for decades, and we are in the beef cattle business. We have about 400 Hereford cattle and sell meat to farmers markets and restaurants. So I have a long history in the ag business and deeply devoted to ag in this state as well. Part of the reason that I'm running for governor, because I'm kind of in an unlikely spot, never having run for office, never worked for the government, but running for governor. And part of that is a bit of my life story. And some of you may have heard that. I had a tragedy in my life years ago. My first wife was killed when I was 40. And to say that it was an eventful day in my life would be an understatement. It was a tragic, devastating experience. But it also was an experience that God used in a most powerful way in my life. The Lord walked through that season with me in a way that changed me forever and caused me to look at my life differently, how I was going to raise my kids, which I single-parented for years, how I was going to run my company, and frankly, how I was going to live the rest of my life and what I was going to be involved in. That led me to a belief that I should be more involved in life-changing work, and the bio referenced my mission work, but I also got really involved in nonprofits more in my community. And a couple of those experiences were particularly impactful to me and caused me to think about public service. I chaired the YMCA of Middle Tennessee, which is one of the largest Ys in the country, and they have a program called YCAP for inner city kids, and I met a kid one day named Adam, and we had a little conversation that was really inspiring, and I decided to invest time in that kid's life. So I drove into the very troubled neighborhood in Nashville once a week, every week, and spent an evening with Adam. I learned a lot of things from him. Part of what I learned is how little I know about life for some Tennesseans. But I also learned that because of an experience I had with him from moving him from one public school to another, the power of education in the life of a child and how important education is to the future of Tennessee. I became passionate around that subject, got involved in public policy around that, and started thinking about this idea of public service. I had a second experience that was similar. About the same time, I got involved in a prison ministry I actually had been on the board for several years, but I got involved by deciding to mentor a man that was coming out of prison. And I spent one morning a week, every week, with that man. And we're still very good friends. He's now been out for 7 years. I learned a lot about his life. I learned a lot about public safety, recidivism. I became passionate about that subject, reentry, how it is that we should reenter in a different way to make life safer for all of us. And I got involved in public policy there. Governor Haslam appointed me to a task force on recidivism and sentencing reform. So I was a businessman and a farmer and a dad and grandfather who started touching the power of public policy in the lives of people all across our state. Also recognizing that government can actually be pretty inefficient and ineffective at times and somewhat out of touch, and the power that outside influence can have when injected into that process. So I had spent most of my adult life trying to make life better for 1,200 plumbers and pipe fitters and welders and electricians. And I was compelled by the thought that it might be possible for me to spend my life making life better for 6.5 million people. And I told Maria we were going to pray about that for a year, and we did, and we heard, and decided to, in fact, seek the highest office of the executive branch of government. I've had a life of executive leadership, and that fit me. So a year ago we announced, bought an old RV, went to 95 counties in 95 days, which sounded like a really great idea when we launched that out. It was aggressive, but we enjoyed it very much. In fact, it was a great idea, because what we found was this is a remarkable state with remarkable people, but we have some remarkable challenges as well. And, you know, whether you live in Sullivan County or Shelby County, people want a good job, they want a good school for their kid, they want a safe neighborhood. That's what really matters to every Tennessean, and that's what we found, and that's what I'll be focused on going forward. A couple other things we found I'll share with you, a little bit like stories from the road that Randy has shared. You know, I'm a product of rural Tennessee. I live on a cattle farm. I grew up rural. We talk about broadband. We don't have broadband at my house. We don't even have cell service at my house. But I love rural Tennessee, and I have a deep appreciation for it. I actually think it's foundational to who we are as a state. But I have a real belief, and especially as I've traveled this state, that we're at risk of losing a way of life in rural Tennessee. And if we don't do something decisively different, we will lose it. And it's why I rolled out something called a roadmap for rural Tennessee a year ago. It's why Maria and I drove a tractor from my farm. We hauled it to Mountain City and then drove it to Memphis. A fun thing for us to do. She followed in a pickup. A fun thing for us to do, but a very serious subject. And so I have a real defined plan for what we can do in rural Tennessee. And part of that is vocational and technical education, a subject that is talked about a lot, but for me, a guy who got a master plumber's license when I got out of school and who employs hundreds of tradespeople, we started a trade school at our company 10 years ago and have educated 1,000 plumbers, pipe fitters, welders, electricians, skilled tradesmen and women. We desperately need that in our public school system. And when I'm governor, we will have that in our school system because it's been a part of my entire working career. Pathways to success for the 4 out of 10 kids in the state who aren't going to college, and we haven't done much to prepare them. One other thing I'll share before I close about sort of stories from the road. Maria and I are on what we're calling a Faith in Tennessee tour. My faith in Christ is the most important thing in my life, and that will never change. And because of that, that combined with the fact that I'm a conservative who believes that that government is really bigger and more government is never really the answer. But oftentimes nonprofits, and in particular faith-based nonprofits, are much more effective at producing real change. We decided to pursue this Faith in Tennessee tour. I actually think the voice of the faithful has been made to feel increasingly unwelcome in this country and especially in the public square. And that's a terrible mistake, because the faithful community, particularly in this state, is untapped, it's underutilized, it's a resource and it is a value system that faith, family, and community, that's a value system that isn't old-fashioned. It's actually desperately needed in the future as we move forward in this state. And because of that, I have done this Faith in Tennessee tour, visited 30 faith-based nonprofits across the state, and I have a plan to have an Office of Faith-Based Initiatives as governor to make sure that government creates an environment where those who are most effective can do the real work of transforming some of the deepest challenges in our state and in our society. I'll close. Those are a few of the things that we found on the trail that are important to me. I'm a conservative guy, and I would encourage you to look me up further, to find out more about me, to find how strongly I feel about First Amendment, religious liberty, Second Amendment, defending that right, the right to life, and my belief, deep belief, that life begins at conception, that we've lost our way in the 10th Amendment. I'm a conservative guy, but most of all, I am a guy who has a great deal of hope for what Tennessee can become. On the side of that old RV that Maria and I, some of you might have seen it parked out, and we drove it from Memphis to here. It has a scripture reference on it. It says Psalm 71:14. As for me, I will always have hope. I've had some really dark days in my life, but I knew where to find hope. And there are pockets across this state of folks who don't have access to a good job, a good school for their kid, and a safe neighborhood. But I have a great deal of hope that we, in fact, can provide those for folks, and that Tennessee can not only be a better place to live for every 6.5, 7 million people that live here, but that, in fact, Tennessee can lead the nation. And I would be honored to serve you. I have been a student of leadership my whole life. I think the most powerful form of leadership is servant leadership. And I would be honored to serve you as we together, as the next leader, as we together take Tennessee to a place where she leads in America. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Our next candidate tonight is Kay White. Kay has served for many years as a political activist, working for individuals such as Rick Santorum and Ted Cruz. She was also the Tennessee delegate for now President Trump to the 2016 Republican National Convention. Candidate White, thank you for joining us.
Well, I feel like I'm at home. I would first like to take this opportunity to take 1 minute, because I love young people. And if you've lived in this town very long and you ever had a football player that played at Dobbins Bennett, they most likely visited my house, because Coach Wilson used to say, if you'll go put up some hay, you don't have to have summer practice. But I would like to say thank you to the young people who were serving our meal tonight. So let's give them an applause. I found it interesting that one young man said, I would vote for you, but I'm not old enough to vote. So I like it when young people work. I want to also tell you, I had a blessing before I got up here to speak. It's always a blessing to me when I can hear someone say that I've blessed their life. There was a young lady that came up to me and she said she'd never run for an office. And she said she heard me speak at a group one night, and she said it inspired me so much that I decided I could be a candidate. So I'd like to say thank you to her for making my night. It blessed my life. Okay, here we go, guys. I'm going to tell you the two most important things in our state in this day and time right now. Number one is your safety. That's right. That goes for our military. It also goes for our law enforcement people who are underpaid and often underthanked. Number 2 is our teachers. Our teachers have in their hands the lives of our most precious gifts that God has given us, and that's our children. And I truly believe that. Most teachers in this state start out around 27 to 32,000. I'm told that the highest paid teachers are those that live in the Memphis area, and that is because their lives are more in jeopardy. Think about it. If you were a single mother and you were making $35,000 a year, could you make a house payment or car payment? Could you provide for your children? I don't think so. I know that I have worked 2 jobs to send my last little girl to school. She went 7 years. I thought she'd never get through. But we did not take out student loans. She worked, she had to pay for her own car and those things. So I believe in teaching your children to work for things. And I believe that you need to teach them faith in God. Let me tell you, the one thing that has been destroyed in our world today is faith in God. Look back on the brochures that I had in July. 2 of the things are coming to pass, and I love it. And I hope that some of the legislators might have gotten their idea from me. And one of those things was that all state-owned buildings should have a plaque displayed that says, "In God we trust." And I believe that in God we trust. And I'm going to tell you something, that running for this office, thank you. Running for this office has already been a blessing to me. And I'm going to share with you, because I had the opportunity to go and speak with the young people at UT Chattanooga, And I looked around at those young people and I said, you know what? You look like you're pretty sharp young people. I think you're pretty sharp. So why are you letting these liberal professors put these liberal ideals in your mind? Think for yourself, study, and I challenge every one of you to prove to me there is no God. Because in trying to prove there is no God, you will become the greatest believer of all. And then they asked a lot of questions, and I answered them. But when I closed, I said to them, in my closing statement, once again, I'm looking around at all of you, and I'm going to tell you, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. You only have to believe. And that's how I have based my life. There's some reasons that I'm running for this office. There's some things that have happened in our state I haven't liked. Number 1, and think about it, the present administration brought some of these things about to be. Number 1, he made a deal with Obama and brought the refugees in. The refugees are now on your TennCare. They're on your back. They're on your tax dollars. They're living in housing projects, many of them. Some of them work, some of them don't. Did you ask for it? No, but you got it. Number 2, is there anyone, there might be, but I certainly had never heard of Common Core until the administration that we have now introduced the new teaching system. It is now called Tennessee Standards. I am for making sure that our children are not told that they must stand and repeat, "There's no God but Allah." And that's how this came about to be, that our legislators in this great state were made aware of what was being taught, because there was a man right here in East Tennessee from Bristol whose little daughter came in, straight-A student, and she said, she was crying, and she was so depressed and down. And he said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Well, I'm going to get an F." He said, "An F? Well, you're straight-A students." She said, "Well, my teacher said that I didn't repeat after her," and he had to coax her a little, and she finally said, she said that we had to stand and say, "There's no God but Allah." And she said, I shook my head no, because my God is in heaven. And that's what her parents had taught her. So he took it upon himself to go to the school system in Bristol. He went to their legislators. He made a video. Some of you might have seen that. We had a church over in Johnson City that volunteered to invite the public in, and he showed the video and showed you how when they opened the program that said Christianity, guess what, folks? It said this site is unavailable. Now, I didn't like that because I've got 12 grandchildren. Your program says that I have 2 great-grandchildren. I now have, that I have 1, I'm sorry, and I now have 2 because 1 was born 2 weeks ago. But what's important is those little lives that are going to have to grow up not being taught about God. So what are they going to be? Atheist? This bothered me, and this is why I decided that I should be a candidate too. If for no other reason, I'm a little bit like Trump, you know, the media doesn't list me, and they don't invite me to all of their debates, and they talk, they just kind of ignore me. But who is our president today? Donald J. Trump. And I am the only candidate running for governor that supported him. No matter what anyone says, I'm the only candidate running for governor that was a delegate for him. I started out working for Cruz, and I stopped working for him when I became aware that there were some people working for him, not him. He's a great man, great Christian man. He's a great Republican. But I stopped working when I realized that he couldn't do it. He didn't have the people behind him that had the faith that he had. But I still think he's a great man. But Donald Trump had something that no one else had. What did he have? He had umph. That's what we call it here in Northeast Tennessee. Because, folks, we know that Tennessee doesn't stop. East Tennessee does not stop in Knoxville. We've had too many people that have been down there in power, and they feel that everything should stay from Knoxville down. I want you to know that I visited with some people in Cock County. They have a bridge that's about to fall. Now, you're looking at a woman and listening to a woman that's going to make you a promise. When I'm elected, that bridge will be fixed before lives are taken. Let's just pray that if it's God's will that I am your governor, that bridge holds up until then. I'm going to make you a second promise. I'm going to make you a promise that any new tax that comes up on my desk will not be signed. I'm also going to make you a third promise. Bud Halsey went to bat for you folks. He presented to the state legislators, all of them, both branches, how that the Bible is the oldest law book in our world, not just our nation. And that passed both houses. But it was not signed into a bill by the governor. Maybe you didn't know that. You've got to think with me, what do we want in our state? Do you want a woman that can say no? Do you want a woman that can tell it like it is? If so, you're looking at her, because I don't have to have their millions of dollars. It'd be sure nice. But when you've raised 9 children, you don't have a whole lot left by the time they've gone to school and you've helped buy cars and done all the things I've done. But I'm proud to say I'm from Northeast Tennessee. I love all parts of Tennessee, and I won't forget you, and I won't go back on my word, and I won't get down there and become a part of the in crowd who really doesn't care about you, the people. I promise you, I'm not establishment, and I never will be. I'll always be one of you. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless Tennessee.
Thank you, Kay. I remarked earlier that Congressman Diane Black was stuck at the airport, but I'm pleased to be able to announce that she has made it. Black has served as the U.S. Representative for Tennessee's 6th Congressional District since 2011 and previously served as a member of the Tennessee Senate. Representative Black, thank you for joining us.
You are so welcome. Thank you. Well, I'm so glad to be here today, and I apologize for my being tardy. I would have liked to have said hello to each one of you as you were eating or as you were coming in, but I want to thank everyone who set up this room today. It's beautiful, and when I walked in, I thought, wow, I think this may be the biggest party event that I've gone to, and so you all are certainly always one of the biggest in the state, and I think tonight you may have actually blown out your records. So it's great to be here with you this evening. I want to recognize a couple of people before I begin making my remarks, and one of them was going to be my surrogate, and Ron Ramsey, who is a good friend of mine and has served this state really well. He is my state honorary campaign chairman, and I do thank you, Ron, for being willing to stand in. Now, some of you may say, I wish Diane wouldn't have made it here. You'd like to hear from the Lieutenant Governor. But I am really just delighted to have his friendship and have him here with me, walking beside me and help me with this campaign. The other two are right here on stage that we serve in Congress together. Marcia and Phil do such a good job and make such a good delegation. I also want to thank DA Barry Staubis and Wayne Anderson for being a part of my Law and Order coalition. We have set up a coalition to help me to understand what we need to do in making our law better, to hold our criminals accountable, and most importantly, to prevent those crimes. I know it's already been done, but I want to say thank you to all the veterans that are in the audience. My husband, my son, my dad, my brother, all veterans, and so I want to say thank you. We honor you, and thank you for your service to our country. So I want to start out by telling you a little bit about myself and my background, and I want to take you back to my parents, and the reason I do that is it really does inform who I am today and how I operate. So I'm fortunate to have two parents that were Depression-era parents. They are still alive today and still live in my childhood home. My mom is 93 and my dad is 92. And you know what my dad always says is he married an older woman. She's 5 months older than he is. And she still gets mad at him when he says that after they've been married now for 72 years. But my parents didn't have any more than a ninth grade education, and I started out the first part of my life living in public housing until my dad was able to get a skill and move us into the house, as I say, that they live in today. What was really a great thing for me in my life is that I had an opportunity to go to a high school that was outside of my neighborhood, and there was a counselor there, Richard Whiting, who saw something in me I didn't even see in myself. And he asked me in the ninth grade as my counselor what I wanted to do, and I had always wanted to be a nurse. But I told him, I said, Mr. Whiting, I can't go to college. My parents, they've already told me you can't be a nurse because we don't have the money to send you to school. And he told me, he said, you know, nobody's going to give you the money. You're going to earn your way to college, and you're going to get good grades. And he was with me and walked through from my ninth grade to my 12th grade. He was with me, watching me and making sure, mentoring me through that time to make sure that I did well, and I was able to get a college scholarship and stand here today with my education as a nurse because of Mr. Whiting. From Mr. Whiting, I learned to set high expectations and high standards. But from my parents, I learned hard work, I learned never give up, and I learned my Christian values. And I stand here today on the shoulders of both of them. So I want to tell you why I believe that I am uniquely qualified to be the next governor of this state. As I've already said, I'm a career nurse. I'm not a career politician. I came to public policy as a result of being a nurse. Back in 1998, when I was working at Hendersonville Hospital in the emergency room, I saw what was happening with our state in the TennCare, and their single-payer system, where I could see that we were not giving the kind of quality care through that system, and it was costing our state a lot of money. And I thought, well, I just can't sit by and do nothing. And I put my name in the hat for the State House of Representatives, and I won. And I found that I was a pretty decent legislator. As a matter of fact, during my time in the State House, I passed a lot of legislation, but I will tell you two that I'm very proud of. One is that I was the sponsor in the House and the Senate for SJR 127, which ended up being Amendment 1, and we passed here in our state to put that amendment in the Constitution. It is the most significant piece of pro-life legislation that's been passed in our state, and I'm very proud to have been a big part of that. The second piece that I'm very proud of, and I'm going to say that I had a colleague in this, sitting right up here on the stage with me, was fighting against the state income tax, and I know Ron did as well. There are probably some others. And anybody in here, one of the horn honkers, where you came down to the Capitol and rode around the Capitol and honked the horns? I see a couple of hands here. One of my assistants said, I can't believe you got on the radio and told people to come down here and honk that horn, because I have a headache every single day from those people driving around the Capitol honking that horn. But we were able to stop that state income tax, and that was one of the greatest things we could have ever done for our great state, is to keep us from having an income tax, which has caused people from all over this country to want to come right here to this state because of our low taxes. I'm very proud of that. The other piece that I'm very proud of is having served in the State House, the State Senate, where I was the first female, as a matter of fact, with my great leader, Ron Ramsey, being able to work with him as the caucus chairman. I was the first female caucus chairman in the state, in the history of the state. And when they told me that, I said, go back and check, because I don't believe that. But I'm very proud to have served with Ron and Mark Norris in making sure that we kept a really conservative view in everything that we did. And Ron was a great leader in that effort. But then when I ran for Congress, and just last year was asked to serve as the budget chairman, was probably one of the greatest honors I've had in public policy. That budget chairmanship gave me the opportunity to write with the president the most conservative budget we've had in 20 years. It passed the House, unfortunately did not pass the Senate. It missed passing the Senate by 1 vote, and that really has been a shame for our country not to have had that conservative budget. But the other thing that conservative budget did is it led us to being able to do tax reform, tax cuts, which we all know has really helped our families and also our job creators, and we're seeing one of the greatest economic booms we have in the last decade because of that. And I'm proud to have worked beside the president in that effort. Now, we need government to get things done, and I believe that I'm a governor with my unique background to be able to do that. And let me talk about 3 things that I think are really important. I'm going to run through those, and I know it's getting late. I, as some of the others have said, have a real love for rural Tennessee. Half of my district, 60% of my district is rural, and I know that we are losing rural Tennessee, and it's because they don't have 2 things that they really need in order to make them successful. Both of those are infrastructure. One is broadband. And we used to think broadband was just one of those connectivities to the internet that was just a pleasure for watching TV or whatever. It is a necessity now. You cannot recruit a new business or industry into an area unless you can offer them an internet connection. So I don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but I can tell you we are going to have broadband. Whether we have to do it through the public sector or the private sector or a combination thereof, I'm going to commit we're going to get broadband across this state, so all of our rural areas. The second thing is to have good roads. Because if you have a factory that's going to be bringing product in and out, if they don't have a good road, they're not going to come to that area. And that's what's going to keep our rural areas and the rural culture continuing to thrive. We don't want them to change completely. They like people that live in rural areas. My constituents like the rural areas, but you've got to have industry in order to stay alive. And so rural areas are near and dear to my heart. The second piece is career and technical education. I know that's been mentioned previously by some others on the stage, but here's what I want to do. I want to be sure that in the 7th or 8th grade, every student has an opportunity to take an aptitude test or an inventory. And I don't want them to just put it in the drawer, because I understand there are schools around that are doing aptitude inventories to help students to know what their God-given talent is. But if you just take it and put it in the drawer, it's no good. I want to have career counselors that are going to help them to understand what they can do. What is your God-given talent? Match it with your interest. And then, not everybody needs a 4-year education. We have a lot of industry that's asking for plumbers and welders. Let's put them on a track. I want a dual-track system for graduation diploma system, where you can say, I want to go in this direction with career and technical education. And I would like to be able to work with our factories and industries to find out what they need, put it into the schools, give them all of the education that they need, so when they graduate, they have a license to practice whatever trade it is that they were trained on in school. Because we know this is needed. I hear it all of the time by industry. Please help us. Give us an educated workforce. So let's make sure when our kids graduate, they have either a skill or a pathway to success. The third thing is opioids, and as a nurse, it just breaks my heart. We know that we're losing our youth. If you pick up the newspaper and you see that someone has passed away at an age of 20, 22, 25, 30, and there's nothing about what the disease entity was, you can probably pretty much be sure that it is having to do with opioids or drugs. You know, everybody in this room probably has a story of their own, or you know somebody that does. We certainly do. My husband has lost 2 of his siblings to drug overdose. It is a human cost to both the family and our society, and we must fix this. There are 3 buckets. I won't go into them, but I think the first one is prevention. We have to teach our young people and our adults the appropriate use of pain medication. The second is law enforcement. Let's put harsher penalties out there for those that are dealing and pushing these drugs. And then the final piece is let's be compassionate. Let's help people get recovered so they can get back into their life, back with their families. Now, there's another reason why I believe that I am uniquely qualified to be your next governor, and that is that I'm going to fight really hard for us to keep our Tennessee values, keep our tradition. And I can tell you that we can lose that if we're not careful. We get a lot of people that are moving into our state from other states. And they'll come from California, they'll come from New York, and they'll say to me, well, that's not the way we do it in California. That's not the way we do it in New York. And I tell them, if you don't like our traditional values, go back to New York. Go back to California, because we're going to keep our traditional values right here. You know what? In the state of Tennessee, we know right is right, wrong is wrong. We know truth is truth, God is God, and a life is a life. And we're not going to give up on those values, because we may be the only state left in this union that is fighting for that. As you look around and see what's happening throughout this entire country, we are a state that's going to be a red state, and we're going to be true to the nature of who we are and our Tennessee values, our Christian values here. We stand for the flag, we honor our national anthem, we defend life, and we defend the Second Amendment. And I don't want those to go away, and I can promise you, as your next governor, I will defend those. I'm going to end now by saying that I covet your prayers, not just for myself, but all of those that are on stage. As we travel around throughout the state with our message, we covet your prayers, because I know people are praying for us. They tell me that whether I'm knocking a door, or I'm in the grocery store, or I'm at church. So I covet your prayers. I ask for your vote, and I ask you to join me in my campaign if you like what I said. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you this evening.
Let's give all of these candidates a round of applause. Okay. All right, I promise everyone we have less than 5 minutes remaining. I'm going to make one quick announcement and then turn it over to Keith to wrap us up. If you have enjoyed hearing from the candidates here tonight, as soon as this event is over, the Sullivan County Young Republicans are having an after-party event right down the hallway. So the candidates are going to come by and mix and mingle, so please come out. If you have not already purchased your ticket for that, you can purchase it at the door for a small fee. So that being said, Keith?
Thanks, Jeremiah, and thank you to all of us. Congressman Black, I can guarantee you this is the best Reagan Day dinner across the state. We can argue over whether it's the biggest, but it is definitely the best. Seriously, Congressman Black, Randy, Bill, Kay, thank you for joining us and sharing your story on why you're running for governor. And Congressman Blackburn, I'm pretty sure the president decided today, when you came and spoke to the Sullivan County Republican Party, was the right day for him to tweet his support for you today. So you can thank us for getting that in today. But appreciate you coming and sharing your words as well. So you thought I was done, but I'm back, and I really am just standing in here. So unfortunately, the chairman of our local party, Dustin Goforth, was stuck with the rest of them in Nashville, and we've had some turnover, but we are here to celebrate the Morning in America Award, which is given by the chairman. And so I'm just standing in delivering it, but I will award it on his behalf. If I can find the notes that instruct me on what I'm supposed to do. So the Morning in America Award is the highest honor given by the Sullivan County Republican Party and is given at the discretion of the chairman. It recognizes someone in the county who embodies the optimistic spirit of Ronald Reagan, that our best days are ahead of us, and by working together, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. As many of you know, President Reagan said, "You can tell a lot about a fellow's character by the way he eats his jelly beans." The award is this engraved jar of jelly beans, which is similar to the one that President Reagan would keep on his desk and pass around prior to cabinet meetings, watching and judging which jelly bean you would pick out of the jar. Past winners are listed in your program, and many of them are here tonight. I do want to take a moment to recognize those past winners. If you're a past winner of this award, would you please stand so we can recognize you? I know you're around, and I'm looking at a few of you right now. I think that's the smallest number of folks we've had stand up this evening being recognized, so you can see how exclusive this society is. This year's winner can only be described as a true Ronald Reagan optimistic person. From volunteering on campaigns to working in various roles in the Republican Party, you could always depend on this person. For over 25 years, this was a prominent attendee at picnics, meetings, and Republican functions. Many designations have been bestowed on this individual. Serving as advisor on many campaigns can be one label that's attached. Another one includes in serving in various capacities as a member of the Sullivan County Republican Party Executive Committee. Added to this has been serving on the State Executive Committee, and currently he serves on the Sullivan County Election Commission, and in 2015 was appointed as a Republican representative to the Bureau Ethics and Campaign Finance Committee, where he has served as chairman. One final honor granted is being the past chairman of this dinner. All of these distinctions and recognitions make him a valuable asset to the Sullivan County Republican Party. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the 2018 Morning in America Award winner, Mr. Tom Morton. We seated him at the back of the room, so you'd have to applaud longer while he made his way to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Morton. Well, thank you all. I appreciate again everyone being here tonight. As we depart tonight, as you say your nightly prayers, again, keep in mind the Bush family as they deal with the departure of one of our favorite first ladies, Miss Barbara Bush. Don't forget to early vote. If you do forget to early vote, don't forget to vote on May 1st, and then again in August as we get through the primary and get to November, where we can elect two of these individuals to their statewide offices. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Be safe, have fun, and thank you again for being here. Good night.